What up, YouTube? It's your boy Detroit Love with another video. Today we're going to take a look at the brains of this arcade, the Raspberry Pi. This little tiny inexpensive computer is what gives you everything you need. This is the Raspberry Pi. It's a small computer. Used to be $35, about $38 market rate now. But it's made in the UK. And it's a little, it's a what they call a board, computer on a board. And it's designed to be cheap, or affordable, or inexpensive, whatever choice of words that you want. And it's designed to be used for small projects. It's affordable so that you can use it in a lot of areas where it wouldn't make sense to buy a full computer to do a particular job. So I just look at what's on the Pi. You have your auxiliary port for your sound, that's audio out. You have your HDMI out. This is your power port here, micro USB. This is a little port that you can use to connect like ribbon based type connections, like they have a little camera that you can buy. And you can lift this thing up and slide that ribbon in and close it back up. You won't use that at all for this project. You have what they're called the GPIO ports or pins. You see there, this is the Raspberry Pi Model B Plus. And see, that's the logo, Raspberry. HDMI, and you have your 4 USB ports. You'll use all of those. I believe you'll use all of them. You have your 2 for your joysticks. First, player 1, player 2. You'll have your keyboard dongle, which allows your little micro keyboard to communicate, and you'll use this 4th one for charging your keyboard. So with this build, you'll use all 4 of those. This is a internet LAN or Cat5 port. You won't necessarily use that because it has wireless built in. The old version didn't have Wi-Fi built in. You used to have to use one of your ports. But that's no longer the case. The Wi-Fi is built in. And I think we've covered everything. Speaking of covering everything, I put out a case video that talks about the case to protect this. Now, you can choose not to protect this, but that's up to you. But it makes sense to put a case around it. Alright, so this is your computer, but your computer needs an operating system. By default, it has no operating system, no files, no anything on it. Oh, so the one thing I did omit is this little port here is for your micro SD card. I can point. So the SD card just slides in the top. I don't know if it says that. There it goes. It says it there. Micro SD card. Okay? So you can't be confused because everything else, that's HDMI. Does that say power? It does, says power. I think it's upside down. Where is it? Power in. You see that? And does this says anything about audio anywhere? Nowhere that I can see. But that's your auxiliary. And you see you have another port that won't be used, similar to this one. All kinds of little pins and places you can use for different projects, but this one we will use. We will use some of those pins for your fan, and you'll use a couple of these pins for your built-in power switch that's on your Arcade1Up. Okay, so in order for this computer to be used, you will need an operating system, and the operating system needs to be contained on this micro SD card. Alright, so let's see if we can get this thing opened. With my handy dandy neck knife. Oh no. Just rip that off the top. Alright, so this is what we need, these two things. Okay, so we need this sled in order to slide it into a computer that requires that has a standard SD slot. So the tools that we need for this project, or this phase of our project, is a computer. So you can have a computer, it can be a Mac or Windows, but without a computer, your Arcade1Up modification comes to a complete standstill, because you do need to be able to get your image. So let's just talk about that. So I just want to show you this SD slides into here. The old version used to have like a spring, and it goes in backwards where you don't see the logo, I believe. Yep. Nope, I stand corrected. You do see the logo from the bottom. Okay, so it plugs in this way. There's no spring action like on the Pi 2. You just have to pull it out. And so that makes... So this is important. I said earlier, you have to have an image on your SD card which goes into your Pi, otherwise nothing happened. Without a computer to create your image, your project comes to a screeching halt. All you have at this point in time is a unassembled piece of artwork. You have to have access to a computer, and not just any computer. It has to be a computer that has either a built-in micro SD card reader, or you can have an external one that plugs into the USB drive. But you have to have a computer and the ability to write to a micro SD card. Some readers, you can put the micro SD right into the reader, or you may need to use the sled. Like in this case, I can use the SD sled to allow my micro SD card to be accessed by the computer. You need the SD card formatter app. That does exactly what it sounds like. It allows you to format, clear everything off of the disk that you have, the SD card. and then the Win32 Disk Imager. This program, just like it sounds, the name gives away to, is it allows you to create a disk from an image. So it's a disk imager. It's going to allow you to take an image and write it to disk. And you have to have an image to write to the disk. And which image are we using? The 32 gigabyte arcade only RetroPie 4.4 main from Wolf and Oz. That's the image that we're using. And so let's just look at that, what they say about this on arcadepunks.com. And so he really designed this to be used with the attract mode. I don't like the attract mode. I thought when I first got into this I would like the attract mode. I actually like the emulation station better, but it's up to you. But as you see the note there at the bottom, this image is going to automatically boot into attract mode, so you will need to reboot into emulation station to set up your controllers. Then if you want to use the attract mode, you can then launch the attract mode once again. So that's a very crucial step. You will not be able to configure your controllers, and when we say controllers, that's your buttons and joysticks, in the attract mode. You have to go to emulation station to do that. So this is where you get your image from, and how to do that you have to find somewhere else. Alright, but here are the two programs, the two apps. They were called programs until mobile came along. Now they're apps, but they're programs. When you put your SD card into your computer, I'm going to take it out for a second. If you bring up your My Computer or your file manager, it shows you all your drives, either in the center or along the left column. When I insert my disk, you can see there's a My Computer, then C, D, E, F, and so on. When I plug this in, you see the A appeared. Boot has a little picture of the SD. Just zoom in there. So there's a little SD icon. Yours may look different, but you'll see it appear when you plug it in. If you missed it, just unplug it, plug it back in, you'll see the letter. So A is very important, because everything we do in formatting, we don't want to format C, D, or any of these other drives. So we definitely want to format the appropriate one, which in this case is the removable storage called the A drive. Okay, so now we know our drive, which we have to identify our drive letter, and so our SD card, and here's the icon in case you lose it somewhere. There's the SD card formatter app, the Win32 Disk Imager. That's this program. I've already launched both of them, so they're both running. Here, all we're going to do is make sure we select the right disk. We're going to stick with quick format. So we have our A drive. Let's see, it says select card, and it doesn't show you anything that's not a card, so that's helpful. We're going to do quick format, and and it shows that the capacity is 29.81. Whenever you buy a computer disk, it'll always say one number, 32 gig, but the capacity would always show less than that. So we are going to hit format down here in the lower right corner. It's going to ask us, now formatting is going to erase everything off this card. Do you want to continue? We do, so we'll say yes, and it won't take long. See the green status bar, and it tells us that this card was reformatted. Now see here, this label, I could have named this something different, like 32 gigabyte, pi. I could have changed that. I think you have only 8 characters. If you make it longer, it'll abbreviate it for you. So we're done with the SD card formatter. Now we want to look at the imager. So once you download your image, it is going to this folder here, and here is the file, the Wolfen Oz Arcade Only 32 GB Raspberry Pi 3. That is the image that we want to write. We locate where it is. It's on my D drive in a directory called Raspberry Pi Images. So that's important because with our Win32 disk imager file or program, we have to identify. Now you see I have something here, so that's not what I want to use right now. So I'm going to hit this little file folder and navigate over to D drive, because that's where I put it, into Raspberry Pi Images, and there's my arcade only image. So I'm back at the disk imager program. So this is what it's saying. It's saying I'm going to take this image file, and that is the right image file, and which device am I going to write to? Remember, we identify our disk as A, so make sure I'm picking A. And the only thing else matters here is that we want to write our image to the card. So I'll click write. It's telling me writing to a physical device can corrupt the device. Target A, boot. Are you sure you want to continue? And we're going to say yes. Now this is roughly going to take about a half an hour. So with the magic of video, we'll be back in a second or two. But in real life, it'll be about 30 minutes. And that's going to depend on your computer speed, your card reader speed, and your actual SD card. So when the image is done writing, it will say write successful. So you can hit OK there. Like I said at the beginning of the video, once you boot up the 32 gig arcade only image, it will boot into the attract mode first. And so with the attract mode, you don't have a very easy way to configure your joysticks the first time you log in. So when you get into this attract mode, use your keyboard that you plugged in ahead of time and just navigate down to RetroPie. Okay, hit the OK button, and then you want to go down to and find reboot to emulation station. Reboot to emulation station, and just hit OK. It's going to switch the default, switching default boot to emulation station and rebooting. Because the nice thing about the emulation station, it sees those new joysticks of yours, and it will let you hold down one of the buttons and start to configure. So that's the state that we want to have it in before we plug in our joysticks and before we put it into the cabinet. That way we don't have to worry about that stuff later. So we're almost there. Emulation station logo should pop up here momentarily. There you go. It takes forever to see all this script and all these letters on the screen. I have another video that shows you how to get rid of that upon boot up. Alright, so you see it shows 2 game paths detected, and that's because we have these things plugged in. Alright, so now we can just turn this thing off. We can do F4 to, because it says here, hold a button to configure it, the device, or press F4 to quit at any time. So thanks for watching. What we're going to do next is show you the case that I recommend. Go through that in a very detailed manner, and then after that we get into the control panel and the joysticks and the buttons.